Ariana stepped off the ferry and squinted into the relentless sun, the salty air clinging to her cheeks. She held her small travel bag, which bore the embroidered slogan of the retreat, "Serenity awaits." The island looked idyllic from the shore. Pristine white sand, tall palms swaying in the breeze, and a sprawling mansion that sat perched atop a gentle hill. The crisp turquoise of the surrounding sea sealed the illusion that this would be a perfect escape from the chaos of everyday life. A uniformed attendant greeted her with a warm, practiced smile. Walking beside him toward the mansion, Ariana observed the carefully manicured landscape. Lush gardens flanked the stone path where water features gurgled peacefully. It all felt too perfect, as though plucked from a catalog. As they approached the colossal wooden doors, she glimpsed a group of other attendees gathered in the foyer. Each wore the same wide-eyed curiosity that she imagined she must also show. Once inside, the high ceilings and soft music immediately instilled a sense of calm, albeit a manufactured one. A woman in a linen suit quickly appeared and offered a welcome drink that tasted faintly sweet, followed by an introduction. "Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Lucy Peterson. I'm the director of this retreat, and I'm delighted you're all here. Our goal is total rejuvenation, body and mind." She spoke in a measured tone with an air of authority that was instantly disarming. Ariana eased into a chair in the large lobby area. Around her, the other attendees introduced themselves in hushed voices. There was Patrick, a tense man with a haunted expression who refused to disclose his occupation. Emma, a former marathon runner recovering from a knee injury. Joshua and Kelsey, a married couple who argued in half whispers when they thought no one was watching. And Rita, a reserved older woman who seemed to be scrutinizing every inch of the mansion's interior. Dr. Peterson gestured around the group. "Your comfort here is our top priority. However, we do have rules. Everyone will attend each day's sessions. No one is allowed to wander in restricted areas unaccompanied. If you have any questions or concerns, I'm here to assist. Now, let me show you to your rooms where you can unwind before dinner." Ariana's room, located at the end of a long corridor, overlooked a still courtyard. A fountain in the center sent gentle ripples across a small pond. Something about the courtyard felt like an enclosed stage, too well maintained to be spontaneous nature. The moment Ariana closed the heavy wooden door, she tried locking it. The lock gave a satisfying click, but the feeling of security was fleeting. She explored the space, a plush bed, an antique trunk at the foot, and a single painting of a sun rising over a black sea. The painting's imagery was eerie. It should have conveyed hope, yet it made her uneasy. After dinner, which was served in an elegant hall with a gleaming chandelier, Ariana was left alone for the evening. The meal had been exceptionally good, but every bite tasted laced with intention, too perfectly seasoned, too precisely portioned, too carefully orchestrated. Everybody else seemed unsettled, even if they tried to hide it behind forced conversations. That night, Ariana couldn't sleep well. She heard footsteps echoing in the corridor. She dug her face into the pillow, trying to convince herself they were just the workers doing their nightly checks. Eventually, exhaustion claimed her. She drifted off into restless dreams. Morning arrived with a gentle knock on Ariana's door. A staff member, a petite woman named Coral, announced that the day's activities would begin in the main conference room. Ariana dressed in casual clothes, then made her way there. The space looked more like a scientific workshop than a place for meditation. An array of computer screens lined one wall while heavy drapes concealed the windows. Dr. Peterson stood at the front, wearing a bland smile. "Welcome to the first session. Here, we'll explore your emotional boundaries. Please, find a seat near the monitors." The group took their places in a semicircle. Ariana noticed that Kelsey absently twisted her wedding ring, and Joshua stared at the floor. The screens burst to life with a series of images. Serene landscapes, fields of flowers, then abruptly shifting to jarring scenes of natural disasters. A volcano erupting, floodwaters demolishing a building, a wave devouring a coastline. The images came in rapid bursts, disorienting Ariana and making her pulse quicken. Everyone else tensed, eyes darting from one flickering screen to the next. Dr. Peterson's voice remained calm, guiding them through it. We often harbor unconscious fears we never address. These images will bring them to the surface. Embrace the discomfort. Breathe through it. The flickering scenes escalated in intensity. Wildfires, tornadoes, collapsing bridges, before the screens finally went black, leaving them in abrupt silence. Kelsey's hands trembled in her lap. Patrick looked as though he were ready to bolt from the room. Ariana exhaled in relief, thinking this was the end of the session, but Dr. Peterson began distributing small tablets. These contain a mild sedative. It will help calm your stress hormones so we can safely discuss the emotions that surfaced. A uniformed nurse hovered to ensure each person swallowed their dose with water. Ariana hesitated, but ultimately complied, feeling that it would be strange to refuse, especially under the staff's watchful eyes. In the next room, they were separated into pairs. Ariana was paired with Emma, who maintained a polite but distant. They were instructed to talk about their deepest regrets. It felt invasive, but Ariana found herself sharing a story about a broken relationship she had never fully grieved. Emma spoke about her injury that ended her marathon dreams, revealing a bitterness she had repressed. Tears slid down her face. Ariana offered comfort, but something about Emma's expression, her watery gaze directed at the staff, suggested she was revealing more than she wanted to. They persevered for hours, rotating partners, each time forced into confessions more personal. It gave Ariana the sense that she was being mined for secrets. By the time they finished, the sun was low in the sky. Everyone shuffled to their rooms in exhaustion. The undercurrent of suspicion thick in the air. To Ariana, it was becoming clear that therapy here was more akin to interrogation. That night, Ariana heard muffled sobs echoing through the corridor. She opened her door a crack to see who was there, but the hallway was dark. The crying ceased. She listened for footsteps, but heard only the hiss of the air vents. She tried to calm herself, thinking it may have been just another guest having a breakdown. Yet, an overwhelming need to know what was going on gnawed at her. In the morning, they were told to gather in the courtyard for a series of trust exercises. A jitney transported them along a narrow trail through the island's interior before arriving at a fire pit and rows of logs to sit on. Dr. Peterson explained that fear could best be overcome by confrontation. "We've prepared a sensory experience to help you transcend your mental barriers," she announced. Eyes were blindfolded. Ariana's heart hammered. Some unknown staff member took her hand, guiding her over intervening tree roots, whispering instructions not to resist. She was led in circles until she lost all sense of direction. When at last they removed the blindfold, she absently looked around and saw that half the group was scattered so that they couldn't see one another, each under the supervision of a staff member. Dr. Peterson then addressed them, her voice echoing strangely among the trees. "We're going to test how you react when stripped of your senses. Then we'll measure your ability to collaborate under pressure." With that, another staff member slid noise-canceling headphones over Ariana's ears, plunging her into near silence. Left alone in an unknown area, Ariana felt her panic swell. The minutes stretched into an agony of isolation. She tried to gauge how much time had passed, but her sense of it was slipping. She had no choice but to trust that they would eventually free her. When the headphones were abruptly removed, she found Emma and Patrick standing a few feet away, similarly shaken. Dr. Peterson reappeared with an indulgent smile. "Thank you for your compliance. You have faced your fears of isolation. Now we move on." She handed out a set of pendants. Each looked like a small electronic device suspended on a lanyard. "Wear these at all times. They monitor your vital signs. We can tailor treatments for you if your stress becomes unmanageable." Ariana thought the devices resembled tracking chips more than monitors. She slipped the lanyard over her neck, feeling newly tethered and suspicious. When they returned to the mansion, she was directed to a private chamber for a counseling session. Passing through multiple locked doors stoked her paranoia. The most jarring sight in the room was not Dr. Peterson, seated beside a black table, but the bright surgical lights looming overhead. They were out of place, sterile and clinical in an otherwise lavish environment. Ariana took a seat across from Dr. Peterson, who calmly studied her. How do you feel about your progress? She asked in a tone that was both patronizing and oddly comforting. Progress? Ariana nearly choked on the word. I feel unsettled. We've been here only a few days and these exercises aren't typical therapy. Dr. Peterson's smile remained poised. Revolutionary methods can feel alarming, but trust me, we're making discoveries about the human mind that will benefit countless people. She produced a folder, flipping through pages, glancing at Ariana's personal information. Your father died when you were 13, correct? Ariana jolted. She had not disclosed that detail here. Yes, but I don't see how. Trauma leaves deep imprints, Dr. Peterson interjected, her voice unwavering. Our retreat fosters a controlled environment to accelerate healing. The more you confront your past, the closer you get to release. The repetition of phrases like controlled environment and accelerated healing set off alarm bells in Ariana's head. She managed a diplomatic nod before the session ended. On her way out, her blood ran cold as she caught sight of a line of small cameras embedded discreetly into the walls. She realized they were being watched from every angle. By the day's end, Ariana had grown closer to Patrick, who escaped the watchers for a moment to whisper to her. I tried leaving, he admitted, voice low. Went to the ferry side. There's no boat. They say the next ferry arrives in a week, but it doesn't sound right. I'm not sure if we can leave at all. Do you think they're holding us captive? Ariana whispered back, glancing around for eavesdroppers. Before Patrick could respond, a staff member emerged, distributing schedules for the next day's activities. Ariana stuffed hers into her pocket without reading it. In that moment, she realized the staff was determined to monitor every interaction. She and Patrick exchanged another anxious glance and went their separate ways. Another dawn brought fresh dread. The group was instructed to proceed to an underground level for advanced therapy. They followed Dr. Peterson down a narrow staircase that led into a concrete corridor. Lights flickered overhead. Emma stood close to Ariana, whispering that she had heard screams in the night. Ariana believed her. The corridor ended at a steel door. When Dr. Peterson tapped in a code, it unlocked with a resounding click. The room inside resembled a makeshift laboratory. Bright overhead lighting, metal tables, and a row of strange contraptions that made Ariana's skin crawl. Dr. Peterson gestured for them to sit in chairs that had straps on the armrests. We're going to measure neurological responses to stress. Please cooperate, and the procedure will be mild. Each participant was guided to a chair and strapped in, staff members affixing thin metal crowns with sensors across their heads. The contraption hummed as it powered up, and Ariana felt a faint electric tingling. Then came a barrage of images on a large screen. Faces contorted in terror, war zones, horrifying accidents. Her muscles tensed. She couldn't pull her gaze away from the display. All the while, the device on her head seemed to probe her thoughts. Sweat trickled down Ariana's temple. She tried to remember this was an experiment, that none of the images would leap from the screen, but her heart hammered, and her breath caught in her throat. Inside her mind, the images fused with childhood traumas, memories of her father's hospital bed, the finality of the beep on the heart monitor. A sob rose in her throat. There was a beep, and everything went dark. When lights came back, Dr. Peterson stepped in front of them, scribbling notes in a tablet. Excellent, she remarked. Some of you are responding more dramatically than expected. We'll refine our approach. She freed them from the restraints with the help of the staff, proclaiming, Therapy is about facing your deepest fears. You're making remarkable progress. Baffled and shaken, the group was dismissed to a chamber with plush couches for a forced rest period. Exhaustion saturated Ariana's mind. She considered dozing off, but was plagued by the fear that she would be left vulnerable. Instead, she listened to the others talk in hushed tones. Emma's eye twitched. She kept fidgeting with her hands. Joshua and Kelsey cast accusatory glances at one another, seemingly unraveling under stress. Patrick stared at the ceiling, lips pressed tightly together, as though formulating an escape plan. Rita, who rarely spoke, studied the staff who lingered in the corner, her gaze hard with suspicion. In the days that followed, the experiments grew more invasive. Regression therapy sessions forced Ariana to relive painful memories and even conjure up nightmares that felt fabricated. She grew dizzy from the barrage of sedatives and mild hallucinogens that Dr. Peterson insisted were essential for intense introspection. At night, Ariana suspected that staff members entered their rooms while they slept. Tiny objects, like her hairbrush, were moved out of place, though she could never catch anyone in the act. The constant fear bred paranoia among the group, turning them against each other. Ariana witnessed Kelsey snap at Emma for hogging a staff member's attention as if it were some scarce resource. Rita grew silent and sullen, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. Patrick at least maintained a sense of camaraderie, and they hatched a plan in hushed whispers after dark. One evening, Ariana crept out into the hallway, careful to avoid the cameras she had mapped out over the past days. She met Patrick at the corridor near the laundry storage, a section rarely patrolled. He carried a small flashlight and, with the caution of a fugitive, led her through a winding path into the service tunnels beneath the mansion. Dim bulbs flickered overhead, revealing pipes and stacks of supplies. They navigated quietly, listening for footsteps. Eventually, they reached a locked door with a panel of wires at the side. Patrick pulled a small multi-tool from his pocket. He began tampering with the circuits, trying to circumvent the lock. Ariana's heart pounded. "Who are you, Patrick? You seem too prepared for this." He cast her a quick glance. "I'm not entirely who I said I was," he admitted. "Let's just say I was curious about this place. My employer had suspicions about unorthodox practices, so I signed up to investigate." The admission raised more questions, but Ariana stayed silent. Finally, the lock clicked, and Patrick eased the door open. They found themselves in a small room lit by a single overhead bulb. There were no windows, only a row of filing cabinets and a wide desk scattered with papers. Ariana sifted through the documents, scanning them by the feeble light of Patrick's flashlight. Her stomach twisted as she realized the papers documented experiments on unsuspecting individuals. Page after page described the psychological torment inflicted to break them down and measure each subject's mental capacity to withstand stress. "It's like we're lab rats," she whispered. "Look, this file on me has personal details that I never revealed. They're analyzing every aspect of our personalities." Patrick's brow furrowed. "We need to get this evidence off the island," he said, his voice trembling with anger. Pages. He snapped photos of the most incriminating pages using a small camera he had hidden in his jacket. Ariana's hand shook as she replaced the files as best she could, hoping no one would notice they'd been disturbed. They were about to leave when heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor. Patrick switched off the flashlight. Ariana's pulse thundered. They huddled in the darkness, hearing muffled voices just outside. The doorknob rattled, then jerked. In the split second before it opened, Patrick lunged behind the desk, pulling Ariana down. She squeezed her eyes shut as light flooded the room. 2 staff members entered, scanning the space. One moved toward the filing cabinets. Ariana held her breath, pressing herself flat to the floor, hidden by the wide desk. The staff member opened a drawer, rifled through papers. Ariana thought for sure they would notice the rearranged files or the meager gap left by the camera. Her entire body tensed. Then one staffer spoke in a low voice. "We should recheck the monitoring devices. The director suspects tampering." The other nodded. "Yes, let's go. We'll come back later if needed." They left, the door closing behind them, enveloping Patrick and Ariana in darkness once more. Ariana let out a shaky breath, blinking against the blackness. The 2 of them crawled out from behind the desk and hurried into the corridor. They retraced their steps in tense silence, eventually making it back to the guest quarters without detection. Later that night, Ariana lay awake, thoughts racing. There was no way to trust that the staff wouldn't come for her next. She clutched her phone, but there was no signal. She weighed the possibility of sabotage or infiltration. Every avenue to contact the outside world was sealed. She pictured the ferry that had dropped her off. Would it return? Or was that too just a staged illusion? The following day, Dr. Peterson summoned Ariana and Patrick to a session together. They were escorted into the lab, forced into side-by-side chairs with restraints on the arms. The overhead lights burned too brightly. Dr. Peterson stood before them, flanked by silent staff members. She wore an expression halfway between disappointment and amusement. "I've noticed some unusual discrepancies in your monitors," she said, folding her arms. "And last night, certain areas of the mansion were accessed without authorization." A prickle of fear crawled along Ariana's neck. She tried to keep her face neutral. Patrick opened his mouth, but the staff forced a gag over it. Ariana watched in horror as they strapped an identical gag over her own mouth. The staff locked them tightly into the chairs. Dr. Peterson strode closer, her tone chillingly calm. "We must maintain the integrity of our research. Curiosity can be dangerous." She turned to a staff member. "Commence the procedure. Administer the next stage of therapy." Ariana thrashed, and though Patrick strained with all his might against the bonds, they wouldn't budge. A staff member inserted an IV into Ariana's arm with practiced efficiency. The sedative coursed through her veins. Her vision blurred, her muscles went slack, and Dr. Peterson's face seemed to hover in a shimmering haze. The last thing Ariana heard was the fading echo of Dr. Peterson's voice. "No one escapes untransformed." The sedative pulled Ariana into a world of sharp nightmares. She floated through jumbled recollections. Twisted versions of the other guests flitted in and out of these dreams, their faces distorted by torment. When Ariana finally awakened, she was lying in a dimly lit room. It took a moment to realize she was unrestrained. Across from her, Patrick also stirred, blinking in confusion. A single staff member stood guard near the locked door. Dr. Peterson's voice drifted in through an intercom system. "Your resilience has been tested. What comes next is up to you." Something in Ariana snapped. She found a steely resolve in the pit of her exhausted spirit. She stood, swaying on unsteady legs, and charged toward the guard, her adrenaline overriding any fear. Patrick followed, tackling the guard around the waist. In the chaotic tussle, Ariana grabbed the guard's keycard. They managed to wrestle him to the ground just long enough to unlock the door and slip out. Their flight through the corridors was frantic. Sirens blared, and red emergency lights bathed the walls. Doors slammed shut automatically, triggered by the alarm system. Ariana and Patrick dashed up staircases through the courtyard, the once inviting fountain now looking more sinister in the flashing lights. Fellow guests appeared, equally terrified. Emma, Kelsey, Joshua. Ready yet? No one had a cohesive plan. Everyone seemed desperate to flee. Patrick spotted an exit leading outside, and they stumbled into the open air. The shutters on the mansion's windows slammed down in synchronization, sealing off the interior. Staff members poured out of side doors, armed with tasers. The guests scattered. Ariana grabbed Emma's hand, pulling her along. "This way," she cried, making a break for the dock area where the ferry once arrived. Scrambling over rocks and through thick vegetation, the group burst onto the sandy shoreline. Ariana's stomach sank as she saw only a deserted wooden pier. No boat. One staff member fired a taser, catching Kelsey in the back. She crumpled, shrieking. Furious, Joshua lunged at the staff, wrestling the taser away. Emma helped Kelsey to her feet. In the ensuing confusion, Ariana spotted something on the horizon, dark shapes moving across the water, too small to make out. Could it be another boat? Rescue? Before she could focus, Dr. Peterson's voice rang out, amplified by a megaphone from the hillside above. "Stop. Traveling by sea is impossible right now. The currents are too strong. Surrender and we'll end this pursuit without further harm." Ariana's mind spun. This was all part of the experiment. Fear, hope, betrayal. It had to be. She pictured the hush of the labs, the staged illusions meant to intensify their psychological unravel. There was only one way forward. They would have to find a functioning boat, or at least radio for help. She and Patrick sprinted along the shoreline, the others struggling to keep up. Reaching a secluded inlet, they discovered a small skiff tethered on a rickety dock. It looked neglected, but potentially seaworthy. Patrick frantically untied it, while Emma and Kelsey to climb aboard. Joshua, still brandishing the taser, helped the half-conscious Kelsey onto a bench. Rita, arriving last, slumped inside, her face etched with dogged determination. Waves buffeted the skiff. Patrick twisted a rusted key in the ignition. It coughed and sputtered but finally roared to life. Shouts from the staff echoed across the beach. Several scrambled to the water's edge, but none seemed prepared to swim after them. Dr. Peterson stood apart from the staff, her stance eerily calm, surveying the group as though they remained test subjects in a grand laboratory. The skiff lurched away from shore, slicing through the surf, battered by the strong current. Water splashed into the boat, soaking Ariana's ankles. Fear clawed at her, but hope guided her movements. She took the flashlight from Patrick's jacket and flicked it wildly, signaling to any distant vessel, to any airplane, to anything that might see. In the chaos, Ariana looked back at the beach and locked eyes with Dr. Peterson. The woman's lips were parted in an unsettling smile, as though she expected the ocean itself to swallow them and prove her final lesson. Ariana could almost hear her unspoken words. No one escapes untransformed. The island receded in the distance. Clouds drifted across the sky, swallowing the sun. The skiff's engine sputtered dangerously, but it pressed on. Ariana huddled with the others, scanning the horizon. They might have only minutes of fuel, maybe an hour, yet she felt the weight lifting. The possibility of freedom glimmered, even if they did escape. Ariana wondered how they would ever truly leave that place behind. The experiments had scarred them, unraveling their minds and forcing them to see themselves in unsettling ways. They had discovered vulnerabilities they never knew they had. Beyond that, they bore knowledge of the retreat's true purpose. It wasn't simply a sanctuary. It was a labyrinth of psychological torment disguised under promises of renewal. A hush descended on the boat's occupants, a silent prayer that the machinery would hold, that the waves would not turn savage. The horizon was an endless stretch of dark water, and though Ariana dreaded what might lie ahead, she clung to a fierce resolve. Whatever the cost, they would carry this story of the island beyond that treacherous sea, ensuring the truth would not stay buried in that haven of doubt. She could still feel the phantom gaze of Dr. Peterson somewhere behind them, wreathed in the island's oppressive silence. But for the first time since the ferry arrived, the path forward was her own.